Hi, my name is Will Richardson. I'm a parent of two teenagers, a former public school educator for 22 years. I taught high school English, and I'm the author of four books, the last one being Why School, which is a TED book. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about what personal learning networks are in the context of a networked world and why they're important, and maybe give you some starting points on how to begin to get connected on your own. So the world has really changed in the last 15 years because of the web. And if we have access now, we have access to somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 billion people. And we are slowly but surely gaining access to the sum of human knowledge pretty much in our pockets, which is a huge transformation that's happened very, very quickly. And one of the ways in which a lot of people are beginning to understand how learning takes place and how education takes place in that context is through what a lot of people are calling personal learning networks. So a PLN is when you connect to other people from around the world who share your passions or interests, who basically will push your thinking, ask questions, answer questions that you have, and that become kind of this offloaded brain of yours that you can interact with, you can ask questions to when you need to. It's this group of people who are out there around the world, many of them strangers, many of them people that you'll never meet, but who are kind of tied together by their interests. And in my case, my PLN is pretty much made up of people who are trying to answer the question, what changes for schools and what changes in classrooms when the world looks like it does now, when we have all those connections and when we have all this access. So it's not just people, as it's also about a lot of content, a lot of organizations and publications and whatever else that can make up this kind of learning network that we're talking about. But it's basically being able to connect to the people and resources that you need when you need them, and to figure out how you interact with those people and those sources in ways that kind of build your connections and kind of grow your network and make it expand and make it even more powerful. It's probably, from a professional development standpoint, one of the most powerful pieces of PD now. And it's I think, fair to say that because of PLNs, because of the access that we have, professional development is really the individual's responsibility now. It's not so much about the institution providing PD. It's about us kind of becoming comfortable with the idea that learning is not an event any longer. It's kind of an ongoing thing, and that it's within these types of global networks that really important and deep learning can take place for us. And that's what informs our practice. That's what informs our classrooms, and it's what informs our discussions about education. So there are some complexities here. Obviously, it's not just a matter of starting to find these people and connect with them, but in a world of social media where there are so many people out there, it's really understanding there's almost like a network literacy to interacting in those spaces. A lot of it has to do with, so how do you know who these people are that you're connecting with? It's easy for anyone pretty much to develop and create a persona online that may be very different from who they are in real life. So do you have the kind of skills and abilities to figure out, is this person who she says she is or he says he is? Do they really have the backgrounds that they are putting up there online? Are they really people that that I want to interact with on a regular basis? Can I trust them? So that's a part of it. There's a safety aspect of it, obviously, especially when we begin to talk about PLNs in the context of kids, and I think that's an important conversation. I have two teenagers, and they have networks. They have more social networks than learning networks right now. But I think that they're going to need a learning network in the same ways that I have one, and in the same ways that literally millions of educators already have them. So there's that safety aspect of it, and making sure that we share what's appropriate and share enough to make those connections. I like to say that we really do want to be found by strangers online now. I know that sounds kind of weird, but That's really where a lot of learning happens. It's when I get a tweet on Twitter, a mention on Twitter from someone who I don't know who's sharing a resource with me, or I get an email or a comment on my blog from people who I don't know, but who are willing to extend my learning by sharing their own. And again, that's really what the potential of this is. I like to say that if you told me that I could only learn with people in my face-to-face worlds right now, you'd be pretty much eliminating 98% of my learning opportunities. And so, we have to have a literacy around those networks to not only identify who people are, to keep ourselves safe, to make sure that we have diversity within those networks, that we have people with differing opinions who can challenge us, who are willing to push our thinking and to give us different perspectives. One of the dangers, I think, of being in these kinds of online networks is that we find ourselves in places where everybody agrees with one another, and we kind of just are patting each other on the back. We call that the echo chamber, and that's not really a good place to be. We want to make sure that we build in diversity in the conversation, so that's a big part of it. And I think there are all sorts of ethics that go along with this that we have to think about, that we have to incorporate into our participation, and that includes giving people credit for the work that they do, making sure that we're acknowledging the work of others and not taking it as our own, and just making sure that we're keeping other people safe within our interactions in those online spaces as well. So it's not as easy as just kind of finding a whole bunch of people and connecting to them. But the good news is it is quite easy actually to begin to make those connections at the beginning, and then to think thoughtfully about where we go from there. I think probably one of the best places to start is Twitter, actually. It's a place that over the last 6-7 years has just exploded. There are tens, if not hundreds of millions of people who are participating on Twitter. And I know a lot of the things that happen on Twitter are kind of nonsensical and in many ways juvenile and whatever else. But Twitter can be really powerful if you understand who to follow on Twitter. That's the most important thing. If you can find people out there who are being thoughtful about whatever the topics are that you're interested in, if you can kind of connect with them and begin to interact with them, ask them questions, share resources with them, and if you can build that Twitter list to even as many as just 20 people, it can become a very interesting place to continually learn. And that's really what Twitter is about. It's kind of this flow of information. It's this river of stuff that goes by. And if you're following great people on Twitter, you're pretty much guaranteed to get relevant, interesting information back from them every single day. And that's a big part of the kind of professional development that I was talking about before. Being able to keep up on the news, being able to see what other people are doing in their own practice, to see how people are innovating, to really be able to not just see it, but then to connect and ask questions. Twitter's a great place to start doing that. Other places, other ways that you can begin to do that, to kind of add to your personal learning network. Certainly you can start a blog, you can comment on other people's blogs, you can kind of wave your hand and say, hey, here I am, I have an idea, or I have a reaction or a thought, and I'd like to share it. And you can do that on Flickr, you can do it on Instagram, you can do it in all sorts of places now where people are kind of connecting socially. But then those social connections can fall out into learning connections. And that's a not so subtle distinction, obviously, but it's one that's important to make. So, the basic idea is that we have a lot of ways to connect socially, and in many cases, those social connections can turn into learning connections, depending on, again, finding people who share our interests and the types of resources and questions and ways that we interact around that. Well, I think the challenge for educational leaders now is, first of all, to understand what's happened in terms of learning, in terms of our ability to connect and to learn on our own. We have to understand that learning is moving away from the institution and moving more toward the individual. And that's a big change that educators are going to have to get used to. We have to prepare kids, I think, to learn on their own more than anything else. When I look at my own two children, I really believe that their success is going to be predicated on how well they can learn the things that they need to learn when they need to learn them. It's not going to be so much all the stuff that maybe is in their heads that they've covered in the curriculum as they've gone to school, but it's going to be, can they reach out to other people? Can they find those resources that are relevant, that are accurate, and that are interesting? And so as leaders, we have to look at what happens in schools through that lens. We have to understand that the context has changed pretty dramatically right now, and that our roles are really more about facilitating environments where kids can learn deeply around the things they care about, creating these networks as a part of that process, creating artifacts around their learning that they share with the world, becoming more transparent, becoming really literate at the ways in which they can interact and create things online. And if we're going to facilitate those types of environments, we have to own that practice, I think, as leaders to some extent. You're going to have to be connected. You're going to have to model that type of sharing process. You're going to have to, at some point, use computers to create things that are really meaningful and beautiful and authentic and live in the world, have a real purpose in the world, because that's what our kids are going to need to do. That's the real shift and the powerful opportunity that my kids have and that the kids in your schools have right now that I think most of us are missing, to be honest. And I'm not blaming anyone for that. I don't think anyone deserves to be thrown under the bus for that. This has happened really, really quickly. And the contexts and the kind of technologies and affordances with those technologies that shape the way we think about learning and education have changed very, very rapidly, and in many ways very radically. So it starts with us. Can you model learning in networks online? Can you understand it to the point where you can counsel your teachers, where you can answer their questions, where you can gently push them forward, where you can rethink curriculum, where you can make decisions about technology based on that vision, based on that understanding of how the world has changed, where you can talk to parents about why we need to have connections inside the classroom, why we need to show our kids how to connect with other people who they may not know, that there is a real opportunity there to learn. And I think, we have to have our own practice around that, so we can advocate to policymakers the types of changes that we need to see in schools right now, where schools need to become much more learner-centered, much more authentic, much more inquiry-based. In a world of answers, we need to be asking really good questions, and our kids need to be asking really good questions as well. So for all those reasons, having your own PLN is important right now for a leader. It's a requirement, I would say. We can't not be connected, and we can't not be learning in those contexts now, because our kids really need us to understand it so that we can prepare them more fully for the kind of modern learning environment that they're going to live in.